Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to dive headfirst into Guyanese politics.
Oh, boy.
Specifically, a recent press conference by Dr. Bharat Jagdeo, who is the General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party, the PPP.
Okay.
And we got a whole stack of sources for you guys. News articles, analysis pieces, and...
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a wild ride. Let me tell you, accusations of corruption are flying, political maneuvering is in full swing.
Of course.
And there's even a Lamborghini thrown in the mix.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, get ready.
Buckle up.
It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Yeah, it is a wild one. I think what's really striking here is how Dr. Jagdeo is using this press conference as a platform to set the stage for the upcoming Guyanese elections.
Right.
He covers a lot of ground, but there's a very clear strategy at play here.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to craft a narrative that positions the PPP as like the best and most stable choice for Guyana.
Yeah.
While portraying the opposite, the APNU plus AFC, as not just incompetent, but a risky choice for the country.
He definitely didn't hold back on the criticism, that's for sure. It seems like he's trying to paint a very specific picture of the opposition, you know, from their economic policies to their alleged willingness to align with individuals who have faced sanctions.
Yeah, and it's not just about what he's saying, but how he's saying it. Dr. Jagdeo very strategically uses economic data, even weaving in positive assessments from institutions like the IMF to bolster his points.
Yeah.
So he's really hammering home the idea that the PPP is the party of responsible economic management and growth, in contrast to what he claims was a less successful period under the APNU plus AFC.
He spent a lot of time talking about the IMF. Yeah. And their positive assessment of Guyana's economy.
Right.
It almost felt like he was saying, like, see, even the global experts agree with us.
Yeah, that's a very clever tactic. By invoking the IMF's positive statements about Guyana's economic transformation and fiscal management, he's adding a layer of legitimacy to his claims. It effectively counters any opposing narratives and subtly positions the PPP as the party that brought Guyana back from the brink, considering it was declared uncreditworthy back in the 80s and 90s.
Then there's this whole saga with the Mohammeds, this wealthy family that has faced some serious accusations, even sanctions for alleged gold smuggling.
Right.
It seems like Dr. Jagdeo is playing a very delicate game when he brings them up.
It's a tightrope walk.
Okay.
Absolutely. He wants to create a clear distance between the PPP and any implication of wrongdoing.
Right.
Yet at the same time, he uses these accusations against the Mohammeds to chip away at the opposition's credibility. It's almost like he's saying, look, we may have accepted support from them in the past, but we're putting Guyana first now. And to drive that point home, he highlights the potential economic fallout Guyana could face if they hadn't stepped away from the Mohammeds after those sanctions hit.
Yeah.
Imagine losing access to credit cards, jeopardizing relationships with international banks.
Oh, yeah.
Those are real consequences.
Those are huge. And then there's this almost comical element with the Lamborghini.
Oh, yes.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
It really does. What's fascinating here is how Dr. Jagdeo takes this seemingly trivial anecdote and turns it into political ammunition.
Yeah.
He claims that Azhar Mohammed, the son of Nizar Mohammed, essentially brought the tax scrutiny upon himself by bragging about the taxes he paid on his luxury cars, including, of course, the Lamborghini.
Right.
Now, this triggered an investigation by the Guyana Revenue Authority, the GRA.
Okay.
And they ended up accusing the family of underdeclaring the car's value, leading to millions in unpaid taxes.
So it sounds like Dr. Jagdeo is using this story to portray the Mohammeds as well, a bit careless and maybe even arrogant, but he's also subtly linking them to the opposition, suggesting this reflects poorly on their judgment.
Exactly. He's planting a seed of doubt.
If the opposition aligns with a family facing these kinds of accusations, what does that say about their decision-making?
And he even goes a step further, suggesting the APNU plus AFC might be making promises to the Mohammeds about lifting sanctions in exchange for support promises he believes they can't actually keep. It all feeds into this bigger strategy of portraying the opposition as desperate for power, potentially willing to make deals that could put Guyana at risk.
There's even some mystery surrounding a meeting between the Mohammeds and Nigel Hughes, who's the leader of the AFC. What's going on there?
This is where it gets really interesting. Dr. Jagdeo hones in on the fact that Kemraj Ramjatan, another prominent figure in the AFC, was present at this meeting.
Okay.
Now, the meeting was supposedly about legal matters, but Dr. Jagdeo raises the question, why would a political advisor be necessary for a purely legal discussion? He's suggesting that there's a deeper political agenda at play, fueling speculation and suspicion.
It definitely creates a sense of intrigue, making people wonder if there's more to the story than meets the eye. It all ties back to this idea of spoils of office, which Dr. Jagdeo uses to describe what he sees as the opposition's tendency to prioritize personal gain over the needs of the country.
This phrase is particularly potent because it taps into a deep-seated concern among voters. The idea that politicians are more interested in enriching themselves than in serving the people. By using this phrase, Dr. Jagdeo is subtly reinforcing the notion that the APNU plus AFC might be more interested in dividing the spoils of power than in actually governing effectively.
So with all these accusations and insinuations flying around, what does Dr. Jagdeo say about the PPP's own strategy going forward?
He keeps it pretty straightforward, actually. He reiterates the PPP's commitment to campaigning hard and connecting with the Guyanese people,
Right.
emphasizing their focus on development, continued economic growth, and improving the lives of all citizens. He's appealing to a sense of stability and progress, contrasting it with what he paints as the opposition's lack of a concrete plan.
It sounds like he's going back to basics, appealing directly to voters, and reminding them of the PPP's record. But he also mentions potential alliances with smaller parties, which suggests a more strategic layer to their approach.
Absolutely. In Guyana's political system, these alliances can be crucial for securing a majority and forming a government. By highlighting these potential partnerships, Dr. Jagdeo is signaling that the PPP is actively building a strong coalition, projecting an image of strength and unity heading into the elections.
There's a definite sense of confidence in his words.
Yeah.
Almost as if he's already looking beyond the elections and planning for the next phase of governance.
Yeah, I get that.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
We've got a lot more ground to cover in this deep dive.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I want to zoom in on Dr. Jagdeo's attacks on the opposition and how he's trying to dismantle their credibility. It seems like he's using a very specific playbook here.
He is. And understanding that playbook is crucial for decoding the messages being sent in this press conference. One of Dr. Jagdeo's main lines of attack is this idea that the opposition lacks a concrete plan for Guyana. He repeatedly criticizes them for relying on what he calls empty slogans and rhetoric instead of offering real solutions to the challenges the country faces.
He seemed particularly annoyed by their slogan, people-centered development. What's he getting at there?
This is a prime example of how Dr. Jagdeo uses language to shape perceptions. He's trying to paint this slogan as outdated and out of touch, even drawing parallels to what he claims were ineffective economic policies of the past. He's essentially arguing that the APNU plus AOC is stuck in the past while the PPP is the party of the future.
He also took issue with their focus on things like import substitution and collective self-reliance. It was almost like he was saying they're living in an economic time warp.
Exactly. He wants to portray them as out of sync with the realities of the modern global economy. And to make that contrast even starker, he goes into detail about the PPP's agenda for the future, laying out specific plans for oil and gas development, healthcare, education, infrastructure, the works. He's not just talking about ideas. He's giving concrete examples of how the PPP is planning to move Guyana forward.
He even mentioned that they might include some of these ideas in their upcoming election manifesto, which is a clever way to generate excitement and anticipation among voters.
It is. It makes people feel like they're in the loop,
Right.
like they're part of the process.
Yeah.
And it plays into Dr. Jagdeo's larger strategy of portraying the PPP as a transparent and accessible party.
Yeah.
This is in stark contrast to his portrayal of the opposition. He mentions the AFC website requiring payment to access their vision for Guyana. He's making a point. The PPP is freely sharing their vision while the opposition is hiding theirs behind a paywall.
It's like he's saying they don't even believe in their own ideas enough to share them for free. And that's not all. He also spends a considerable amount of time highlighting what he claims is the opposition's tendency to focus on the spoils of office rather than the real needs of the country. Can you explain what he means by that?
This phrase is loaded with meaning.
Yeah.
He's accusing the opposition of being more concerned with dividing up positions of power and resources amongst themselves than with actually governing effectively. He's playing on this idea of greed and self-interest, painting a picture of the opposition as more interested in grabbing power than in serving the people.
It's a powerful accusation, especially when he contrasts it with the PPP's supposed dedication to the well-being of all Guyanese citizens.
Right.
He's trying to create a clear distinction between the two parties, both in terms of their values and their priorities.
And he doesn't stop there. He goes on to accuse the opposition of being dishonest and untrustworthy, using specific examples to back up his claims. He brings up the disputed 2020 elections, alleging that the APNU plus AFC tried to manipulate the results and then refused to acknowledge their defeat. He's implying that they are a party that can't be trusted to uphold democratic principles.
He seemed particularly irritated by the fact that they haven't apologized for their actions during those elections.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's holding a grudge, using it as evidence of their lack of integrity and accountability.
It definitely adds fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
And he doesn't let up. He goes on to criticize them for spreading what he calls lies about the PPP, especially when it comes to issues like corruption and the economy.
He cleverly juxtaposes their accusations with those positive assessments from the IMF,
Right.
further solidifying his narrative of the PPP as the more credible and trustworthy party.
Right.
He's essentially saying, don't believe their propaganda, look at the facts.
And he's using this strategy across the board. For example, when he talks about Nigel Hughes, there's an underlying theme of elitism. He's portraying Hughes as this out-of-touch lawyer who's more comfortable with wealthy clients and corporate interests than with the concerns of ordinary Guyanese.
He even mocked Hughes's fundraising efforts, saying he's asking people to pay for his vision while the PPP is freely sharing their plans.
Yeah.
It's a way of contrasting the PPP's supposed accessibility and connection to the people with what he frames as the opposition's detachment and elitism.
It's a calculated attack designed to resonate with voters who might feel overlooked or ignored by the political establishment. He's tapping into a sense of frustration with the status quo and positioning the PPP as the party that understands and represents the needs of everyday Guyanese.
There's also this subtle yet potentially explosive element to his attacks.
Yeah.
He seems to be playing on fears of racial and ethnic division, particularly when he talks about the Mohammeds and their possible alliance with the opposition. How is he navigating this sensitive issue?
This is where things get really tricky. Guyana has a complex history of racial and ethnic tensions, and these tensions often spill over into the political arena.
Right.
Dr. Jagdeo is walking a tightrope here. He's very careful to avoid making overtly racial statements, but he's also subtly suggesting that the opposition might be willing to exploit these divisions for political gain.
He's not explicitly playing the race card, but he's hinting at it,
Yeah.
raising the specter of racial tensions without directly addressing it.
Right.
It's a risky strategy,
It is.
but one that could be very effective in swaying voters who are concerned about racial harmony and stability.
Absolutely. He's tapping into a deep-seated anxiety and framing the PPP as the party that can best navigate these complex social dynamics. But let's not lose sight of the bigger picture here. Dr. Jagdeo is a master strategist, and he's using this press conference to craft a very specific narrative. He's painting a picture of the PPP as the competent, responsible, and trustworthy choice,
Yeah.
while portraying the opposition as incompetent, dishonest, and potentially even dangerous.
It's a powerful narrative, and it's one that could have a significant impact on the outcome of the election.
For sure.
But there's another key player in this story that we need to explore further. The Mohammeds. Who are they? And why are they so central to this political drama?
The Mohammeds are a prominent Guyanese family, known for their wealth and their involvement in the gold industry. They've been in the news recently because of those sanctions imposed by the United States government for alleged gold smuggling.
Right.
This makes them a very potent symbol in this election.
Yeah.
Dr. Jagdeo is walking a fine line with them. He wants to distance the PPP from any wrongdoing,
Right.
but he's also using the accusations against them as a weapon to further discredit the opposition.
It's a delicate balancing act, and it's fascinating to see how he's doing it.
Yeah.
He acknowledges that the Mohammeds supported the PPP in the past, but he insists that the party has no ongoing ties to them,
Right.
even claiming that he personally never received any money from them. And he goes a step further, highlighting the risks Guyana would face if they'd continued doing business with the Mohammeds after those sanctions hit.
Right.
He's emphasizing that the PPP puts the interests of the country first, even if it means distancing themselves from powerful figures like the Mohammeds.
Yeah.
But it's not just about distancing the PPP from the Mohammeds, it's also about using the accusations against them to damage the opposition's reputation.
Right.
It sounds like he's trying to paint a picture of a desperate and opportunistic opposition willing to make deals with anyone, regardless of the consequences, just to gain power. And he's contrasting that with the PPP's principled stance, presenting them as the party that can be trusted to make tough decisions and uphold the rule of law.
Exactly. He's using the Mohammeds as a foil to highlight the perceived differences between the two parties.
Right.
But there's one particular episode involving the Mohammeds that Dr. Jagdeo really seizes on. The story of the Lamborghini.
Right.
It's almost too good to be true.
It really is. It's like something out of a political thriller. So walk us through this Lamborghini saga. What happened and how is Dr. Jagdeo using it to his advantage?
It all started with a seemingly innocent social media post.
Okay.
Azhar Mohammed, one of the sons of Nizar Mohammed, decided to boast about the taxes his family had paid on their luxury vehicles, including this flashy Lamborghini.
Wow.
He even posted pictures of the tax receipts, presumably as a way to demonstrate their contributions to the Guyanese economy.
It sounds like a classic case of oversharing on social media backfiring spectacularly.
It does, and that's precisely what happened.
Okay.
The Guyana Revenue Authority, the GRA, saw these posts and decided to take a closer look at the Mohammed's tax filings.
Okay.
What they found was pretty interesting. The declared value of the Lamborghini was significantly lower than its actual market value.
So they were accused of under-declaring the value of the car to avoid paying the full amount of taxes?
Exactly.
Wow.
And the GRA hit them with a massive tax bill demanding millions in unpaid taxes.
Right.
Now, Dr. Jagdeo, being the savvy political operator that he is, seized on this incident to further his own agenda. That's right. He's using this Lamborghini story in a few clever ways. First, he's using it to portray the Mohammeds as careless and arrogant.
Yeah.
He emphasizes that it was Azhar Mohammed's own social media post that triggered the investigation, implying that they were so used to flaunting their wealth and skirting the rules that they didn't think twice about posting those tax receipts online.
It's like he's saying, look how out of touch these people are. They think they're above the law.
Exactly. And this plays directly into his larger narrative about the Mohammeds being corrupt and untrustworthy. But he doesn't stop there. He also uses this story to reinforce his claims that the opposition is willing to associate with unsavory characters for political gain.
Right. He repeatedly brings up the fact that Azhar Mohammed has been campaigning alongside opposition figures,
Yes.
attending rallies and events organized by the APNU plus AFC. It's a way of subtly suggesting that the opposition is cozying up to a family that's facing serious accusations, even if those accusations haven't been proven in court. It's all about creating an image of guilt by association.
And it's a very effective tactic. It raises questions about the opposition's judgment. If they're willing to associate with the Mohammeds, what does that say about their values and their priorities? Dr. Jagdeo even goes so far as to imply that the opposition might be making promises to the Mohammeds that they can't keep,
Yeah.
like lifting those U.S. sanctions in exchange for their support.
He's essentially trying to portray the opposition as so desperate for power that they're willing to compromise Guyana's interests to get it.
Precisely. He's using the Lamborghini story to create a narrative of corruption, arrogance, and questionable political alliances.
Right.
And he's aiming that narrative directly at the opposition.
It's amazing how he's managed to turn a luxury car into such a potent political symbol.
It speaks to his skill as a communicator and a strategist. He understands the power of storytelling and how to use seemingly unrelated events to create a compelling narrative that reinforces his message and undermines his opponents. It's a classic example of how even the smallest details can be exploited for political gain.
We've talked about the Lamborghini and how Dr. Jagdeo is using that story, but I want to go back to the bigger picture for a moment. He spent a considerable amount of time talking about the economy.
Yeah.
It seems like this is a crucial aspect of his overall strategy.
Absolutely. He's strategically weaving economic data and those positive assessments from institutions like the IMF to paint a picture of Guyana's economic progress under the PPP's leadership.
Yeah.
He's highlighting the fact that Guyana has come a long way since its days of being declared uncreditworthy back in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
It's a powerful message, especially for voters who remember those difficult economic times.
It's almost like he's saying, look how far we've come under the PPP. Don't risk going back to the bad old days by voting for the opposition.
That's a very astute observation. He's drawing a stark contrast between the PPP's economic management and what he claims was the APNU plus AFC's mismanagement during their time in office.
Yeah.
He even goes so far as to imply that their policies led to job losses and economic stagnation, blaming them for Guyana's struggles during the COVID-19 pandemic.
And he's very effective at using statistics and anecdotes to back up his claims. He paints a vivid picture of economic decline under the opposition's watch, and then contrasts that with what he presents as the PPP's record of creating jobs, stimulating investment, and fostering economic growth.
Right.
It's a clever way to appeal to voters who might be feeling uncertain about the future.
He's appealing to voters who are feeling the pinch of rising prices, portraying the PPP as the party that understands their concerns and is actively working to address them.
Right.
For example, he mentions the PPP's efforts to mitigate cost of living increases and keep inflation in check,
Yeah.
despite the challenges posed by global economic factors.
He's not just talking about abstract economic theories, he's connecting those theories to the lived experiences of ordinary Guyanese citizens. And he's not afraid to get specific. He cites examples like the labor shortage in the construction industry and the government's support for various employment programs. It's all about creating a sense of momentum, showing that the PPP is actively working to improve the lives of Guyanese people.
Yeah. And he's being very strategic in targeting his message. He highlights the PPP's support for groups like rice farmers and sugar workers,
Right.
who have traditionally been important constituencies for the party.
He's reminding them of the PPP's past support and implicitly promising that the support will continue if they are reelected.
Exactly. And he's also broadening his appeal by talking about the PPP's efforts to support small businesses and entrepreneurs. He's reaching out to a growing segment of the Guyanese population that's looking for economic opportunities and portraying the PPP as the party that can help them achieve their dreams.
It's a smart strategy, targeting groups that are crucial to the PPP's electoral success and highlighting policies that directly benefit them. But he's also trying to address concerns about the PPP's handling of the country's newfound oil wealth.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of debate and scrutiny surrounding the Natural Resource Fund,
Right.
or NRF, which is where Guyana's oil revenues are being deposited.
Some people are worried that the PPP is squandering this wealth, or that it's not being used to benefit all Guyanese citizens.
And Dr. Jagdeo is trying to allay those fears. He's defending the PPP's approach to managing the NRF, arguing that they're using the funds responsibly to invest in development projects and improve the lives of all Guyanese citizens. He even compares Guyana's approach to Norway's management of its sovereign wealth fund, arguing that Guyana is on track to start saving a substantial portion of the NRF for future generations.
It's a way of reassuring voters that the PPP is taking a long-term view and is committed to managing this resource responsibly. He's trying to counter the opposition's narrative that the PPP is only interested in short-term gains and is neglecting the long-term interests of the country.
It's a battle of narratives.
Right.
And both sides are using every tool at their disposal to try to win over voters. This brings us to another key aspect of Dr. Jagdeo's strategy, his relentless attacks on the opposition's credibility.
All right.
He doesn't just disagree with their policies. He tries to undermine their character, their judgment, and their ability to lead.
He's waging a full frontal assault on their reputation, and he's doing it very effectively.
Yeah.
One of his favorite tactics is using their own words against them.
Oh, yeah.
He constantly cites their past statements, their inconsistencies, and their contradictions to create a sense of doubt and distrust in the minds of voters.
For example, he brings up that infamous statement by Nigel Hughes where he said he would prioritize ExxonMobil's interests over Guyana's national interests if the two ever came into conflict.
That statement caused a huge uproar at the time, and Dr. Jagdeo is clearly not going to let the opposition forget it. He's using it to portray Hughes as beholden to corporate interests and out of touch with the needs of ordinary Guyanese.
And he's also quick to point out any perceived flip-flopping on key issues, implying that the opposition is more interested in political maneuvering than in taking principled stands. He even accuses them of flip-flopping on their position regarding an apology for their actions during the disputed 2020 elections.
It's a subtle but effective way of suggesting that they're untrustworthy and unreliable, lacking the integrity to admit mistakes and take responsibility for their actions.
And he doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
He accuses them of spreading lies about the PPP, particularly when it comes to issues like corruption in the economy. He strategically juxtaposes their accusations against the PPP with those positive assessments from the IMF,
Right.
further solidifying his narrative that the PPP is the more credible and trustworthy party.
He's basically saying, don't believe their propaganda, look at the facts.
It's a classic strategy.
Right.
Appeal to logic and evidence while portraying your opponents as peddlers of misinformation.
Right.
But there's also an emotional component to his attacks.
Right.
He's trying to tap into voters' fears of instability and chaos,
Yeah.
suggesting that the opposition is incapable of governing effectively and would jeopardize the country's hard-won economic progress.
He's painting a picture of a divided and dysfunctional party that can't be trusted to lead Guyana into a brighter future.
It's a fear-based tactic,
Yeah.
but it can be very effective in swaying undecided voters. especially in a country like Guyana, which has experienced its share of political and economic turmoil in the past.
Dr. Jagdeo is a master of using language to evoke emotions.
He is.
Whether it's fear, hope, or resentment, he understands the power of narrative and how to use storytelling to shape perceptions and influence voters.
This press conference is a masterclass in political communication.
Yeah.
He's weaving together seemingly unrelated events and accusations to create a compelling narrative that casts the PPP as the heroes and the opposition as the villains.
Right.
And he's doing it with a mix of charisma, conviction, and a touch of humor.
Yeah.
That makes him very persuasive.
But it's important to remember that this is just one side of the story.
Of course.
The opposition will undoubtedly have their own version of events.
Right.
And it'll be up to the voters to decide who they believe.
That's the beauty of democracy. The people get to decide.
Yeah.
But to make an informed decision, they need to understand the tactics being used,
Right.
the narratives being spun, and the stakes involved.
And that's what we're trying to do here on the Deep Dive, to give our listeners the tools they need to critically analyze the information they're being bombarded with.
Yeah.
And to make their own informed decisions. This press conference is just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Right.
And we're going to keep digging deeper to uncover more pieces in the next part of our deep dive.
We'll be exploring the historical context of Guyanese politics.
Yes.
The impact of oil wealth on society.
Right.
And the potential implications of this election for the future of the country.
So much more to come.
So much more.
This is just the beginning. We're about to get even deeper into the fascinating world of Guyanese politics.
Buckle up.
Okay, so we've unpacked Dr. Jagdeo's strategy in that press conference, but it's clear this election is about way more than just one speech. What makes this particular election cycle so significant in the grand scheme of Guyanese politics?
Well, Guyana's history is complex.
Yeah.
It's marked by these deep racial and political divisions that have really shaped the nation's political landscape for decades. You know, it was essentially ruled by two main parties. The People's Progressive Party, which primarily represented the Indo-Guyanese community, and the People's National Congress, representing the Afro-Guyanese community.
So it's not just about, differing political views. It's about identity politics, right?
Exactly.
These historical divisions must have created a very specific political climate.
They really have.
Yeah.
They've created a political climate where compromise and collaboration are often overshadowed by this winner-take-all mentality.
Right.
This makes it incredibly difficult to address the country's challenges in a truly unified way.
You mentioned that the discovery of oil in 2015 added another layer of complexity to this already intricate situation.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, the discovery of oil brought these vast economic stakes into the equation. You know, the potential wealth from oil production significantly raised the political temperature.
Right.
With both major parties vying for control of these valuable resources, and accusations of corruption and favoritism are flying from both sides.
So suddenly, it wasn't just about historical power structures. It was about who would control this new source of wealth. It must have created a lot of tension.
Absolutely. The oil discovery created this highly competitive and often contentious political environment.
Yeah.
Because the stakes are incredibly high.
Right.
This election is about more than just choosing a leader. It's about choosing a direction for Guyana's future and how to manage this newfound wealth responsibly so that all Guyanese citizens can benefit from it.
Given this historical context and the high stakes involved, how do you think Dr. Jagdeo's press conference might influence the election's outcome?
Well, while it's impossible to predict the future with certainty,
Right.
Dr. Jagdeo's press conference is a clear attempt to frame the election narrative in a way that benefits the PPP. You know, he's painting this picture of stability and competence while portraying the opposition as a riskier choice.
Right.
So this strategy aims to sow seeds of doubt and fear in the minds of voters,
Right.
leading them toward the perceived safety of the PPP.
He's also very deliberately appealing to certain groups with tailored messages.
Yes.
Highlighting policies that benefit them.
Right.
And reminding them of the PTP's past support.
That's right. It's a calculated approach to target voters who have historically been loyal to the PPP, reminding them of past successes.
Right.
But remember, he's also working to broaden his appeal, trying to attract younger voters,
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, and those who are optimistic about Guyana's future by showcasing the PPP's vision for progress.
It seems like he's walking a tightrope when it comes to race and ethnicity as well.
Absolutely. He's trying to appeal to voters across racial lines without explicitly addressing or exploiting the existing divisions.
Right.
A risky but potentially very effective tactic in Guyanese politics.
We've talked about the historical context and the high stakes, but let's zoom out for a moment and talk about the bigger picture. How is Guyana as a nation navigating this new reality of being an oil-producing country?
It's a dynamic and evolving situation. On one hand, thanks largely to oil revenue, Guyana now boasts one of the fastest growing economies in the world.
Wow.
This is a dramatic turnaround for a nation once considered among the poorest in the Western Hemisphere.
It's huge.
There's a lot of excitement and optimism about the future, but alongside that comes a sense of responsibility.
Right. You mentioned the resource curse earlier.
Yes.
What are some of the potential challenges Guyana faces to ensure that this newfound wealth doesn't become a burden?
One of the biggest challenges is avoiding the pitfalls that can accompany a sudden influx of wealth. This resource curse, as it's called, has been a problem in many resource-rich countries.
Right.
Leading to corruption, inequality, and even instability.
So it's not as simple as discover oil, become rich, everyone's happy, right? There's a real need for careful management and planning to avoid these potential negative consequences.
You hit the nail on the head. Transparency, accountability, and responsible governance are crucial to ensuring that this newfound wealth benefits all Guyanese citizens and doesn't just line the pockets of a select few. Another challenge is diversifying the economy.
Why is diversification so important for a country like Guyana that's experiencing this rapid growth in the oil sector?
Well, becoming too reliant on oil exports can make Guyana's economy vulnerable to fluctuations in global oil prices.
Right.
This is where Dutch disease comes in.
Okay.
It describes this phenomenon where a nation's currency appreciates due to a commodity export boom, which then makes other exports less competitive and can potentially harm other sectors of the economy.
So it's a bit of a balancing act, trying to capitalize on the oil boom while making sure it doesn't negatively impact other areas of the economy.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot to manage.
It's a huge undertaking.
Right.
And the decisions made in the next few years will have a significant impact on Guyana's long-term future. The current government needs to make wise choices about investing oil revenues, regulating the industry, and addressing the social and environmental concerns that come with oil production. This is where the stakes of this election become so apparent. Voters are choosing a government to manage this transition responsibly and effectively.
Dr. Jagdeo's press conference provided some insight into how the PPP plans to tackle these challenges if they're reelected.
Right.
He laid out their vision for economic development, oil wealth management, and their commitment to improving the lives of all Guyanese citizens.
Right. And he also spent a lot of time criticizing the opposition, arguing that they lack the experience and vision to lead Guyana through this critical period.
Right. But it's important to remember that there are other perspectives and approaches to consider as well.
Of course.
This election isn't just a two-horse race.
Right.
That's right. Dr. Jagdeo mentioned potential alliances with smaller parties, suggesting a more complex political landscape than we might initially think. Can you explain the significance of these alliances in Guyanese politics?
Well, Guyana's electoral system is based on proportional representation, which means that seats in parliament are allocated based on the percentage of votes each party receives.
Okay.
So this system encourages the formation of coalitions, as smaller parties often join forces to increase their chances of winning seats and potentially holding the balance of power.
So these alliances could be a crucial factor in determining who forms the next government, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In a close election, a smaller party could hold a significant amount of sway.
Wow.
Dr. Jagdeo's mention of potential alliances suggests the PPP is actively working to build a winning coalition.
Yeah.
To project an image of strength and unity, signaling to voters that they are the most likely party to form a stable and effective government.
So these smaller parties, even if they don't win many seats themselves, can play an important role in shaping the direction of the country.
Exactly. They often represent specific interests or constituencies.
Right.
And they bring new ideas to the table, forcing larger parties to acknowledge their concerns. This can lead to more comprehensive and representative governance.
It seems like Dr. Jagdeo is very strategic in his approach.
Yes.
Not just focusing on attacking the opposition, but also building these alliances.
That's a key observation. His press conference was as much about consolidating power and building a strong coalition as it was about criticizing the opposition. He understands that in a multi-party democracy like Guyana, building alliances and broadening your appeal are crucial for success.
And this brings us to another interesting aspect of his strategy. His focus on attacking the opposition's credibility?
Yes.
He went beyond just disagreeing with their policies. He tried to paint them as untrustworthy and unfit to lead. Why do you think he chose this approach?
Well, discrediting your opponent is a classic political tactic.
Right.
Dr. Jagdeo is trying to create this negative perception of the opposition in the minds of voters, hoping to steer them toward the PPP. It's not just about policy differences. It's about making voters question the character and motives of the opposition's leadership, sowing seeds of doubt and distrust.
He seemed particularly effective at using their own words against them.
Right. He brought up past statements and actions that contradicted their current positions,
Yeah.
highlighting perceived inconsistencies and flip-flops. For example, he repeatedly referenced Nigel Hughes' statement about prioritizing ExxonMobil's interests, which really struck a nerve with voters
Yeah.
who felt it betrayed Guyana's national interests.
It was a very calculated attack, playing on this deep-seated concern among voters that politicians are often more interested in serving themselves or powerful interests than in serving the people. Dr. Jagdeo also accused them of hypocrisy,
Yes.
pointing out instances where their actions contradicted their rhetoric, making it harder for people to take them seriously.
He also mocked Nigel Hughes' fundraising efforts, contrasting them with the PPP's open sharing of their plans.
Yeah.
It's all part of painting the opposition as elitist and out of touch, while positioning the PPP as the party that understands the struggles of everyday Guyanese.
There's also that subtle suggestion that the opposition could lead to instability and chaos, potentially jeopardizing the country's hard-won economic progress.
Right.
It seems like he's playing on people's fears and anxieties about the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fear is a powerful motivator, and Dr. Jagdeo is a master of using it to his advantage.
Right.
He knows how to push those buttons and exploit those anxieties to make the PPP appear as the safer and more stable choice.
But how effective do you think these attacks will ultimately be in swaying voters?
It's hard to say for certain.
Right.
Some voters might be persuaded by his arguments,
Yeah.
while others might be turned off by his aggressive tone or see it as a desperate attempt to cling to power.
It probably depends on their existing perceptions of both parties, their level of trust in politicians in general, and how effectively the opposition responds to these attacks. It's going to be fascinating to see how they choose to counter his narrative.
Their response could be crucial in determining how much these attacks ultimately impact the election.
Right.
Will they try to defend themselves point by point? Or will they try to shift the focus to other issues?
Yeah.
It's a delicate balancing act.
Right.
And their strategy could make or break their campaign.
Dr. Jagdeo is a skilled and experienced political operator. He's clearly not afraid to play hardball and use every tactic at his disposal to win this election.
Yeah.
But there's another layer to this story that we need to explore, the historical context of Guyanese politics. To really understand the significance of this election and the potential consequences of the choices that Guyanese voters will make, we need to go back in time and explore the roots of this nation's political landscape. Where should we start?
Well, to truly understand the complexities of Guyanese politics today, we need to journey back centuries to the colonial era,
Wow.
when European powers first set foot on this land.
Okay.
Guyana's history is marked by colonization, slavery, indentured servitude, and a long and arduous fight for independence.
Yeah.
These experiences have left a deep and lasting imprint on the nation's social fabric, shaping its political landscape and unfortunately creating many of the divisions we see today.
So in a way, the seeds of Guyana's current political climate were sown centuries ago, and we're still dealing with the consequences of that history today.
Exactly. The legacy of colonialism,
Yeah.
with its divide and rule tactics and exploitation of racial and ethnic differences, continues to cast a long shadow over Guyana.
Right.
It's a reminder that history isn't just a collection of dates and events. It's a living force that shapes our identities, our relationships, and our political systems. To understand the complexities of this election,
Yeah.
we need to grasp how those colonial forces continue to impact the country today.
So let's start with that colonial period. Who were the main colonial powers in Guyana, and how did their rule shape the country's development?
Well, Guyana was colonized by several European powers, including the Dutch, the British, and the French.
Right.
Each of these powers left their own mark on the country.
Yeah.
But it was the British who ultimately gained control and ruled Guyana for over 2 centuries.
And British colonial rule had a profound impact on Guyana's social, economic, and political development, right?
It did. The British established a plantation economy centered around sugar production.
Right.
This system relied heavily on slave labor.
Yeah.
They brought enslaved Africans to Guyana to work on these plantations,
Right.
which created this brutal and dehumanizing racial and social hierarchy
Yeah.
that we're still grappling with the consequences of today.
It's hard to overstate the lasting impact of slavery on a nation.
It's huge.
It shapes demographics,
Yeah.
social structures,
Right.
and leaves deep wounds that can take generations to heal.
It's a tragic and shameful chapter in human history, and it's essential to understand this context when analyzing Guyanese politics.
Right. Even after the abolition of slavery in 1834, exploitation continued, though it took on a different form.
Right.
What happened after the abolition of slavery?
Well, the British introduced the system of indentured servitude.
Okay.
Laborers from India, China, and Portugal were brought to Guyana to work on the plantations. While this system was technically different from slavery, it still involved exploiting vulnerable people for cheap labor.
So even though slavery was abolished, the colonial power continued to extract wealth from the country, relying on exploitative labor systems.
Yes, and this created another layer of complexity in Guyana's social fabric. This influx of different ethnic groups
Right.
competing for resources and recognition
Yeah.
further deepened the divisions that the British had already exploited
And
with their divide and rule tactics.
So those racial and ethnic divisions that we see playing out in politics today have their roots in these colonial labor systems.
They do. The British either intentionally or unintentionally created this system. That fostered competition and mistrust among different groups. This made it extremely difficult to build a sense of national unity and laid the groundwork for the political struggles that would follow.
And this legacy of division and distrust has continued to plague Guyana even after independence in 1966.
It has. The post-independence period was tumultuous,
Yeah.
marked by political instability, racial tensions, and ongoing economic challenges.
Right. The two main political parties, the PPP and the PNC,
Yeah.
emerged from this colonial legacy, each representing different ethnic groups,
Right.
and often resorting to divisive tactics to gain and maintain power.
Yeah.
So it's not just about political ideology, it's about identity politics.
Right.
With each party appealing to a specific ethnic base.
Exactly.
That must create an incredibly challenging political environment.
It does. It often creates this zero-sum game
Yeah.
where one group's gain is seen as another group's loss. This makes compromise and collaboration extremely difficult to achieve.
It's a tragic cycle, and it's no wonder that Guyana has struggled to achieve its full potential with this weight of history bearing down on its political system.
It's a heartbreaking truth,
Yeah.
but there have also been moments of hope and progress.
Right.
The Guyanese people are resilient and resourceful.
Yeah.
They've shown this incredible ability to overcome adversity.
And the discovery of oil in 2015 has opened a new chapter in Guyana's story,
It has.
offering a potential path toward economic transformation and social progress.
It's an unprecedented opportunity.
Yeah.
But it also comes with significant risks and challenges.
Right. How Guyana navigates these challenges will depend largely on the choices made by its leaders and its citizens.
Absolutely.
And that's why this election is so crucial. It's not just about choosing a government. It's about choosing a future for Guyana,
Right.
one that hopefully learns from the mistakes of the past
Yes.
and charts a new course toward unity and prosperity.
It's a chance for the Guyanese people to decide what kind of nation they want to build and how they want to manage their newfound wealth.
Right.
It's also an opportunity to finally address those historical divisions
Yeah.
that have held them back for so long.
We've talked about the historical context and the weight it carries, but we can't lose sight of the people at the heart of this political drama. The Guyanese citizens themselves.
Right.
Who are they? What are their hopes and aspirations? And how are their lives being impacted by these political events?
Guyana is this nation with this vibrant blend of ethnicities, cultures, and religions. It's a true melting pot of influences, reflecting its history of colonization and migration. This diversity is one of Guyana's greatest strengths,
Right.
enriching its culture and society.
It's beautiful to think about a nation where so many different cultures and traditions come together.
Yeah.
But I imagine this diversity can also be a source of tension and division, especially in the context of those historical power struggles we've been discussing.
Absolutely. It's a complex tapestry,
Yeah.
woven with threads of both unity and division.
Right. It's crucial to remember that behind all the political rhetoric
Yeah.
and the sensational headlines,
Right.
there are real people trying to make ends meet,
Yes.
raise families, and create a better future for themselves and their children. What are some of the biggest challenges that everyday Guyanese citizens are facing today?
Well, despite the excitement surrounding the oil boom, Guyana still faces significant social and economic challenges.
Right.
Poverty, unemployment, inequality, and crime persist,
Yeah.
impacting many communities,
Right.
especially those in rural areas and those marginalized due to their race or ethnicity. These problems are often compounded by political instability
Yeah.
and perceptions of corruption.
It's a reminder that economic growth alone doesn't solve all of a nation's problems. There's a need to address the root causes of these social issues
Right.
and ensure that the benefits of progress are shared equitably.
Exactly. A lack of trust in government,
Yeah.
perceptions of unfairness and inequality,
Right.
and a sense that the political system is rigged against them
Hmm.
can create this climate of cynicism and apathy, making it harder to engage citizens in the political process and to implement meaningful reforms.
So it's not just about economic development, it's about creating a more just and equitable society where everyone has a chance to succeed and share in the benefits of progress. Sounds like a daunting task.
It is, and it requires more than just economic policies.
Yeah.
It demands this fundamental shift in attitudes,
Yeah.
a willingness to address historical grievances, and a genuine commitment to building a more inclusive and unified nation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long road, but it's one that Guyana needs to travel to reach its full potential.
Despite the significant challenges, there's also a palpable sense of hope and optimism in Guyana, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The discovery of oil has brought this renewed sense of possibility, this belief that things can be different. It's ignited this spark of hope
Yeah.
that Guyana can finally break free from its past struggles and create a brighter future. The Guyanese people are resilient,
Right.
creative, and possess a strong entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
There's a determination to overcome these challenges, a belief that things can be better, and a desire to be part of something bigger than themselves.
It sounds like a potent combination. The resources, the drive, and the belief in a better future.
It is, but we need to ensure that this optimism is grounded in reality.
Right.
The benefits of oil wealth need to be shared fairly,
Yeah.
and the voices of all Guyanese citizens need to be heard and respected.
Oh.
It's about creating this more inclusive and equitable society where everyone has a stake in the country's success.
We've spoken about the people, their struggles, and their hopes. Let's shift back to the political arena. How are the different political parties attempting to connect with these hopes and aspirations? What visions of the future are they presenting to the Guyanese people?
Each party is vying to convince voters
Yeah.
that they're the best choice to lead Guyana into this new era.
Right.
They're crafting narratives appealing to emotions, logic, history, and identity in an attempt to win hearts and minds.
Let's start with the PPP. What's their main message, and how are they trying to resonate with voters?
Well, the PPP is campaigning on a platform of experience, stability, and economic growth.
Okay.
They're highlighting their track record in government and pointing to the country's economic progress under their leadership.
Right.
They're emphasizing their management of the oil sector,
Yeah.
investments in infrastructure and social programs, and their commitment to fiscal responsibility. It's a classic incumbent strategy, focusing on their accomplishments and experience.
So they're presenting themselves as the safe and steady choice, the party that can be trusted to continue the progress that's been made.
Exactly. They're also contrasting that stability with what they claim is the opposition's inexperience
Right.
and potential recklessness.
It's interesting that they're focusing so much on the economy when there are so many other pressing issues facing Guyana.
It makes sense when you consider that the economy is often the top concern for voters.
Right.
People want to feel secure in their livelihoods
Yeah.
and optimistic about their future prospects.
Mm.
The PPP is trying to tap into those desires
Right.
by showcasing their economic track record and painting a picture of continued prosperity under their leadership.
But they're not just appealing to everyone with the same message, right? They're also tailoring their approach to appeal to specific groups.
That's right. They're appealing to their traditional base.
Yeah.
Those who have historically supported the PPP, such as the Indo-Guyanese community, and those who have directly benefited from their economic policies. It's about reminding them of past successes and promising continued support if they're reelected.
But they're also trying to broaden their appeal, right? They want to connect with younger voters,
Yes.
entrepreneurs, and those who are feeling optimistic about Guyana's future.
Exactly. They're emphasizing the opportunities that come with oil wealth
Right.
and painting themselves as the party best equipped to harness those opportunities for all Guyanese. It's a multifaceted approach that combines experience, stability, economic progress, and a vision of a brighter future.
Dr. Jagdeo's press conference was a prime example of this strategy in action. He's a very skilled communicator, effectively weaving together logic, emotion, and humor to present his case and make the PPP appear as the most sensible choice. But of course, there's another side to this story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can't forget about the APNU plus AFC coalition, the main opposition force in Guyana. They have their own message, and they're trying to connect with voters in a very different way.
What's the APNU plus AFC's main message, and how are they trying to differentiate themselves from the PPC?
Well, the APNU plus AFC is running on a platform of change, accountability, and inclusivity.
Okay.
They're criticizing the PPP for what they claim is corruption, cronyism, and a failure to distribute the benefits of oil wealth fairly. They're accusing the PPP of focusing on enriching themselves and their supporters while neglecting the needs of ordinary Guyanese citizens.
So they're painting a picture of a government that's out of touch with the needs of the people and more interested in maintaining their own power than in serving the country.
That's right. They're also highlighting the PPP's history of racial and ethnic divisions, arguing that they continue to favor the Indo-Guyanese community at the expense of other groups.
It seems like they're trying to tap into that sense of frustration and a desire for change that we talked about earlier. Are they offering any concrete solutions to these problems?
They are. They're promising to create a more just and equitable society where all Guyanese citizens have an equal chance to succeed. They're talking about investing in education, healthcare, and social programs that benefit everyone, not just a select few.
They're also pushing for greater transparency and accountability in government, right? They want to make sure that the oil wealth is managed responsibly and that everyone benefits from it.
Exactly. They're advocating for stronger environmental regulations and investments in renewable energy to protect Guyana's natural beauty and ensure a sustainable future. They're trying to present themselves as the party of the future. The party that understands the challenges facing Guyana and has a plan to address them in a way that benefits everyone.
It's a very different message from what we're hearing from the PPP, who are essentially running on a platform of stay the course.
It is. It's this classic battle between the status quo and the forces of change. The PPP is saying, we've made progress, don't risk losing it by voting for the opposition. The APNU plus AFC is saying, we can do better. We can create a more just and equitable society for all.
It's a compelling message, especially for those who are disillusioned with the current government and feel like they've been left behind.
They're facing an uphill battle, though. The PPP has the advantage of incumbency and control of the state media.
It'll be interesting to see if they can overcome those obstacles and convince enough voters that change is needed. The PPP and the APNU plus AFC aren't the only players in this political drama. There are also smaller parties and independent candidates who are vying for attention and support. What role did they play in this election?
These smaller parties often represent specific interests or constituencies, and they can have this outsized impact on the outcome of the election. Especially in a close race. Remember, Guyana's electoral system encourages the formation of coalitions.
So these smaller parties could become kingmakers, forming alliances with larger parties and potentially holding the balance of power in the next government.
Exactly. And they can also inject new ideas and perspectives into the political debate, challenging the dominance of the two main parties and offering voters a wider range of choices.
That's important for a healthy democracy. It's good to have a diversity of voices and viewpoints represented in the political system.
Absolutely. These smaller parties can force the larger parties to address their concerns and represent the voices of those who might otherwise feel marginalized or ignored.
It sounds like the Guyanese political landscape is becoming more diverse and dynamic, which is a positive sign for a maturing democracy. But let's bring the focus back to one of the most significant factors in this election: oil wealth. How are the different political parties approaching this issue, and what are they promising to do with this newfound resource?
Each party offers a different vision for managing the oil wealth and ensuring its benefits are shared fairly.
We've already touched on the PPP's approach. They're emphasizing their track record, pointing to the economic growth and investments that have occurred under their leadership, essentially arguing that they're the best choice to continue this progress.
That's right. They're promising more jobs, higher incomes, and an even better quality of life for all Guyanese if they're reelected. But the opposition parties aren't buying it.
They're criticizing the PTP's management of the oil sector,
Yes.
accusing them of mismanagement,
Yeah.
corruption, and a failure to distribute the wealth equitably.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're basically saying that the PPP is prioritizing the interests of a small elite at the expense of the majority of the population.
They're promising to create a more just and inclusive society
Right.
where everyone has a fair chance to share in the benefits of oil wealth.
Exactly. They're also emphasizing the need for diversification, arguing that Guyana needs to invest in other sectors of the economy to reduce its reliance on oil and create a more stable and resilient economic base.
That makes a lot of sense. If Guyana becomes too dependent on oil, it could be vulnerable to fluctuations in global oil prices,
Yes.
which could have a devastating impact on the economy. It sounds like the opposition is taking a more cautious and long-term approach to managing this resource.
They are. And they're also emphasizing the importance of environmental protection.
Okay.
They're calling for stronger regulations and investments in renewable energy to ensure a sustainable future for Guyana. They're trying to appeal to voters who are concerned about the environmental impact of oil production and who want to see a more balanced and sustainable approach to development.
It's a complex and nuanced debate.
It is.
With no easy answers.
Yeah.
Voters need to carefully weigh the potential benefits and risks of each party's approach and decide what kind of future they want for their country.
It's a reminder that democracy is about more than just casting a vote. It's about engaging in informed debate,
Right.
understanding the issues, and holding our leaders accountable for their decisions.
This election is a crucial moment for Guyana. It's a chance to choose a path forward, a chance to decide what kind of nation it will become in this new era of oil wealth and opportunity.
It is. It's a lot to consider.
Yeah.
And there's so much at stake.
As we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's one thing you want our listener to really think about as they continue to learn about this election?
I'd encourage our listener to consider this. How can Guyana's newfound oil wealth be used to heal those historical divisions, foster genuine unity, and create a more equitable and prosperous society for all its citizens?
That's a powerful question and one that lies at the heart of this election.
It goes beyond politics and economics.
Yeah.
It delves into the essence of what it means to be Guyanese,
Right.
and how this nation can navigate its complex past to build a brighter, a more inclusive future.
It really does feel like Guyanese voters are at a crossroads, facing a decision that will impact the course of their nation for years to come.
It is. It's a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
And it's crucial for voters to really engage with the issues and critically evaluate those different perspectives being presented by each party.
Right.
They need to look beyond the rhetoric and really consider the potential benefits and risks of each party's proposed approach.
It's a lot of responsibility.
It is.
But it's also an empowering moment.
It is.
It's a chance for the people of Guyana to actively shape their own destiny.
Absolutely. This election really highlights the power of democracy.
Yeah.
While no system is perfect, it ultimately boils down to the people's ability to choose their leaders and hold them accountable for their actions.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
It's been fascinating to explore the complexities of Guyanese politics and the factors at play in this election.
Absolutely.
But as we approach the end of our conversation, there's one question that's been on my mind.
Okay.
Given all the challenges and complexities facing Guyana, what gives you hope for the future?
That's a great question, and it's one I grapple with myself. Despite those historical divisions, the political tensions, and the economic uncertainties, there's a resilient spirit of hope among the Guyanese people that never ceases to amaze me.
I felt that too. There's a real determination to overcome obstacles, a belief that things can and will be better, and a willingness to work together to build a brighter future.
That's where I find my hope, too. It resides in the Guyanese people.
Yeah.
Their boundless creativity, their entrepreneurial drive, their deep commitment to community, and their unwavering belief in a better tomorrow.
I've also been struck by the growing awareness of the need for unity and inclusivity. It seems like there's a recognition that Guyana's diversity is a strength, not a weakness, and that the country can only truly thrive when all its citizens feel valued and respected.
That's a profound observation, and it's encouraging to see this understanding taking root across the political landscape. There's a growing movement away from the old divisions and the zero-sum game mentality. People are realizing that Guyana needs a more collaborative and inclusive approach to governance, where everyone benefits.
And that's where I see the greatest potential for progress. If Guyana can harness its diverse talents, its abundant resources, and its newfound wealth in a way that uplifts all its citizens, The future is incredibly bright.
It's a future worth striving for, and I have no doubt that the Guyanese people have the resilience, the ingenuity, and the unwavering determination to make it a reality.
As we conclude our deep dive into the intricate world of Guyanese politics, what's the one key takeaway you'd like our listener to ponder?
I'd encourage our listener to reflect on this.
Yeah.
How can Guyana's oil wealth be used not just for economic growth, but also to bridge those historical divides, to foster genuine unity, and to create a truly equitable and prosperous society for all its citizens?
That's a powerful question, and one that transcends this particular election. It's a question that will continue to shape the dialogue and the decisions made in Guyana for years to come.
It's a question that speaks to the heart of what it means to be Guyanese,
Right.
and how this nation can navigate its complex past to build a brighter, more inclusive future for generations to come.
It's been an incredible journey exploring all of this with you. Thanks for guiding us through this deep dive into Guyanese politics.
It's been my pleasure. Always a fascinating topic to delve into.
And to our listener, we hope this deep dive has equipped you with a deeper understanding of the complexities of Guyanese politics, the forces at play, and the stakes involved in this crucial election. As always, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving into the world around you.